All right, so this is for Gervonta Tank Davis, who is 28-0, 26 of those wins by knockout. Ryan Garcia, 23-0, 19 of those wins by knockout. No belt on the line. Both undefeated fighters. They're both in their prime. They're fighting at a catch weight of 136 pounds. I'm going to break down a little bit, Bryan. Biggest names on Tank's resume: Gamboa, Mario Barrios, who at the time was the champ at 140 pounds. Leo Santa Cruz, Leo's second fight at 130 pounds. I do want to mention that because he was naturally like a 125, 126 pounder. That was Leo's second fight at 130, and that was the fight where Tank tucked him in for a nap. Isaac Cruz, Tank fought that fight pretty much with one hand, still got the victory. Beat Rolly in a fight where we're going to get into that as well. Also just recently beat Hector Luis Garcia. And then on the flip side, the biggest names on Ryan's resume: Luke Campbell. That was the infamous fight where Ryan Garcia got knocked down in the second round, ended up getting the TKO victory of Campbell in the seventh round, I believe. Then he ended up switching trainers over to Joe Goosen, fought Emmanuel Tego, and he ended up beating him, didn't get the knockout, but that was a fight where Joe Goosen was his new trainer. And then finally, we saw him against Javier Fortuna. Fortuna was dropped in round 4, 5, and 6. There was stoppage in the fight in the 6th round. Fortuna, also a former champ at 130 pounds. So that's a little bit of Tank's resume. That's a little bit of Ryan's resume. I think, Bryan, this is a true 50-50 fight because this could honestly go either way, in my opinion. But I want to get your thoughts. After everything that I just said, catch weight, 136 pounds. They're both in their prime. They've never lost. They both have power. So let's start off with the beginning. Going into this fight, when you think about these two and their careers and where it's at right now, how much do both of these guys don't want to lose at this point in their careers? How big is this fight?
We're going to get into this, and I feel like more in depth a little bit later because I think losses to each of them would be fairly devastating. But I also think that this is too big to not have a rematch. But I also feel like if Ryan Garcia won, there's probably more likely a rematch than if Tank won. And I think when you say this is a 50-50 fight, I think most of us agree in terms of like this can go either way. But I think if we're being honest with ourselves, this feels more like a 60-40 fight. At, at least because like I just think a lot of people who are calling this a 50-50 fight have also said Tank is going to win this.
To have a rebuttal on that, I'm one of those people because I just said, it's a 50-50 fight. And I do think Tank is going to win, but I've been going back and forth on it, Bryan, for weeks.
You've texted me like, I still kind of don't know how I'm going to bet this.
I don't know. I'm not going to know until we do that betting preview because it's like, I do think Ryan has a really good chance in this fight.
Sorry, I just coughed. Yeah, I think Ryan Garcia has a great chance in this fight. Look, when you're looking at just the physical attributes, if you will, and the skills, Ryan Garcia is going to have the height and reach advantage. He's 5'10", he has 70-inch reach. Tank Davis is listed at 5'5.5". Some have jokingly said he's 5'4". He has a 67.5-inch reach. So Ryan Garcia is, you would think, going to benefit from fighting on the outside. The power advantage goes to Tank. Ryan Garcia has power though, and I think the difference with both of these guys is Tank can hit you. Ryan Garcia, the way his power comes is not necessarily just overwhelming you with just sheer strength, but he hits you with shots you don't see coming because he's so fast. And that's what fucked up Javier Fortuna in their last fight. Because going into that fight, Javier Fortuna is somebody who I had a lot of respect for, former world champion, as you said, seen him fight a couple times live. I mean, like in person, not only a couple times throughout his career. So I'm fighting more times than that. He's Dominican, I'm Puerto Rican. So I got to keep track of my, Latino brothers. And I thought, this is a fight that could give Ryan Garcia some trouble. If Luke Campbell knocked him down, Javier Fortuna is better than Luke Campbell. And I was very impressed. Like that was really the first time not the first time in terms of ever in his career, but the first time where he stepped up in caliber of competition where I was like, oh wow, like he fucking dominated Javier Fortuna. And he did it because Javier Fortuna did not see that left hook coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that's going to be interesting to see how Tank sort of handles that. I think Ryan Garcia has a speed advantage in this fight. The chin we would give to Tank because we've seen Ryan taste the canvas. Um, Gervonta Davis hasn't fought a ton of big punchers, but he did survive 12 rounds with Isak Cruz, and that's
Yeah.
noteworthy.
With one arm.
So I
One
want
hand.
to do this. Um, because in terms of like endurance, right? Ryan Garcia's only gone 12 rounds once. I feel like that's worth noting here. He did it against Emmanuel to go. He was also knocked down once against Luke Campbell. Gervonta Davis has gone 12 rounds only twice. Once with Yuriokis Gamboa, who he stopped in that round, and then the other time was with Isak Cruz, which you noted, which was a close win, but a win nonetheless. Who has the defensive advantage here in this fight between these two, from what you've seen?
Tank, I think. Okay, you mentioned two things. You mentioned speed. Ryan does have the speed advantage. Tank has speed too. We just
Hmm.
don't talk about it enough. Tank
Hmm.
has speed. Tank also has a defensive advantage, especially when it comes to lateral movement. Ryan doesn't have the same lateral movement that Gervonta Tank Davis does. I think that's something in the fight that we'll notice that will have Ryan in trouble. He usually moves it straight, like in a straight line, right? He's not
Yeah.
a lateral guy. And I think that's going to get him a little bit caught in the fight, to be real with you. So when I'm like thinking about them, and we'll talk about stylistically how they match up against each other, which is kind of what we're doing now. Defensively, I'm going to give it to Tank, even though Tank gets hit a lot. Listen, he was getting hit clean by Hector Luis Garcia.
He takes chances.
He
He
definitely
takes
does.
risks. Yeah.
And here's the thing about Tank. He's not a fast starter. He is so tactical. He's going to lose some rounds because he knows he's got the power to knock you out. So he's going to start off slow. He's going to lose some rounds early on because when you go back to the fights, like I had him also losing against Rolly. Like in that fight, I had Rolly
You
winning
had
the
him trailing
fight.
that fight. Okay.
Yeah, I also think Hector Luis Garcia was kind of at one point. I was like, okay, I'm giving some rounds here to Hector Luis Garcia
I
as
did as
well.
well. I thought it was up through 6, and then I thought
Yeah,
it was even by the time Tank got the stoppage.
Leo Santa Cruz was doing his thing until he got tucked in for a nap.
Yeah.
I do also want to mention, you mentioned something really important. Like he hasn't fought a lot of dudes with this type of power that Ryan has. So Tank has never seen a fighter like Ryan before in the ring, and Ryan has never seen a fighter like Tank before in the ring, which makes this fight so much better. But defensively, to answer your question, I'm going to give that over to Tank because I also think he has more of the experience. What about you? If you had to break down who has the better defense, would you go with Ryan Garcia?
No, because if you look, and people have pointed this out on social media even, and this is something that I've noticed prior to that, is there's a bit of a habit there that Gervonta Davis is going to try to exploit, which is that Ryan Garcia doesn't always protect his face
Yeah.
to the best of his abilities, right? Um a little overzealous when coming in. This is something we talked about with Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya. I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but we talked about it because I was like, of course, Izzy knocked him out because Pereira just went in there wilding on him, not keeping
Yeah.
a hand up when he was fighting. He was just kind of swinging with both arms, and then it left himself open. Ryan Garcia left himself open against Luke Campbell. Luke Campbell, who is not at all considered a big puncher with respect to Luke Campbell, who's obviously been a credible boxer throughout the course of his career. And he
Yeah.
dropped him really because of a bad habit. Ryan Garcia was not ready for that. I believe it was a straight left hand.
Yeah. But
And
here's the thing though. Sorry to cut you off here.
yeah,
Because I gotta get this off. Yeah, he got dropped to the canvas, but he also got up and then TKO'd him in the seventh round. Like
right.
you
But
you gotta have some type of mental
sure.
toughness to do that. Also, his trainer was Eddie Reynoso at the time. And there was so much talk that Ryan would come into the gym for like 20 minutes and then not show up for like 3-4 days or whatever it was. Obviously, those are like rumors, but that was the talk of it. So Ryan switched trainers. So I don't think he's the same fighter that he was with Luke Campbell when he
But
fought
that's
Luke Campbell.
but has have his the question that he'll need to answer is, have his defensive habits improved? That's mainly
Yeah.
what it comes down to, and that's really what I'm getting at.
I think it's
It's like
improved a bit.
he got dropped and he got back up. Is he going to get back up if Tank drops him? Is my question. Because
Yeah.
Tank is not Luke Campbell, and this is the point that a lot of people are making. Tank, who I would say is big for the lightweight division, he went up and won a belt at 140 against Mario Barrios,
But
who I
he
believe
doesn't
now
want
is
to
fighting at
fight
welterweight.
Ryan at 140.
Right, which is weird, right? But
Right. Let's also put that onto the table because he's not trying to fight Ryan at 140. Why is that? Why don't you want to fight Ryan at 140? Why do you have this rehydration clause where he can only gain what is it, 9 or 10 more pounds? Right? So there's
yeah,
like he knows Ryan has power.
yeah.
There's a reason why that is in the clause. And I just want to say again, like Ryan's not the same fighter that he was against Luke Campbell, and I think he has gotten better defensively. The only thing that I would say about Ryan for my con is, like I mentioned it, dude doesn't have the best lateral footwork, right? So when his opponents use lateral footwork, like for example against Javier Fortuna, who uses a lot of lateral footwork, he was struggling to cut off the ring against Javier Fortuna in those moments. Fortuna, same size as Tank, man. And like you mentioned, like Ryan has the size advantage in this one. He has the height and reach advantage. We're not going to see him bang on the inside, right? He's going to fight from a
We
distance.
shouldn't.
Yeah, and
We
you also
absolutely
don't want
shouldn't.
to bang on the inside with a guy like Tank either. But at the same time, if you notice in that Javier Fortuna fight, he was also throwing the right hand a little bit more. Like he was working the right hand. So my whole question is he going to keep his right hand like cuffed to his face the entire time? Because we know the left hook is his punch,
Yeah.
right? We know the left. So is he going to keep his like right hand tucked so that he's like protected the whole time? Because the one thing that you're talking about defense, he does leave his chin a little bit up sometimes.
That's the
like
thing.
he gets a little bit sloppy, right? And he'll like kind of drop his like hand a little bit where you're like, okay, Tank is going to take advantage of that. But for this fight, it's like I think we might see something totally different because he knows that he can't be that sloppy against Tank.
I also don't think Tank is going to provide as much movement as Javier Fortuna tried to. Like, I don't think Tank is going to be, he's not going to be moving around the ring and then Ryan Garcia is going to be chasing him. I don't think that's something we're going to see either, right?
No, but Tank got the footwork advantage in my opinion.
I
Like
agree.
I don't like Ryan Garcia's footwork that much, to be quite honest with you.
I don't think there's going to be a ton of movement here between either guy. That's not to say that they're going to stand and bang and have an Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward situation. I'm not saying that at all, but I don't think there's going to be this isn't going to be David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant, where Caleb Plant is trying to move around, use the ring, or Tim Tszyu versus Tony Harrison, where Tony Harrison's trying to move that little ass ring that honestly, if it was a bigger ring, maybe he makes it to 12 rounds. I think with this fight, you're going to see guys like move a little bit, but for the most part, it's gonna start off more tactically, and I think Gervonta Davis is gonna open up as the fight progresses. And as he does that, is Ryan Garcia gonna be able to withstand that? Is gonna be the biggest question everybody has, because Ryan Garcia has the height and the reach advantage, but he has to actually use it, I think, to have a real chance in this fight. Because if he gets touched, yes, he's proven that he could get back up against Luke Campbell. That's not the same as getting back up against Gervonta Davis, which a lot of people haven't done at some point or another. And the defensive questions are legit. Like, I think, look, you can't afford to have bad habits here, right?
Yeah.
Tank, while he didn't fight this fight at 140, and this is a 136-pound catch weight fight, which, you know, I feel like, all right, Tank has a title. Like, can't he just defend the title? But, you know, Ryan evidently doesn't want to go to 135. It's just, this sport is stupid sometimes, whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is a fight that also transcends titles, so we'll let it be. But on defense, it's not just a left hand, a left uppercut. Like, Gervonta Davis is also a very smart body puncher. And Ryan Garcia, we don't know if he's weak to the body. There have been jokes about that online, whether or not he is. But ultimately, I think we're gonna find out a lot about both guys. And then the questions about Gervonta Davis. It's like, is Ryan Garcia's speed gonna be too much for him, right? Because it's one thing to go to distance with Isaac Cruz when you're fighting with one arm. And, you know, Isaac Cruz was ready for some of those big shots. Like, he had the left uppercut scouted. He didn't want to get the Leo
close fight too, like 115, 113. That's how I had it scored.
That's how I had it. But at the same time, it's like, I think Ryan Garcia is going to provide some unique looks for Gervonta Davis.
Yeah, and listen, like we talked about defense, like Gervonta Tank Davis takes a lot of hits too. He's getting hit clean by Hector Luis Garcia. We talked about speed. Ryan will definitely have the speed advantage, but has Tank felt power like Ryan's before? He's also a southpaw. When you're a southpaw, sometimes you leave your liver exposed. What does Ryan Garcia do really well? Throws nasty liver shots. Is Tank going to be able to sustain Ryan's power? And that's my biggest question as well, because we know that Tank has like decent head movement. I think the one area where he's going to be very successful, and we saw it against, people will say like, yo, Tank's never fought a tall guy. Like Mario Barrios was a taller fighter.
Mhm.
And Tank was changing levels really good in that fight against him. And I think the thing about Tank where it's hard to bet against him is like he's so deceptive. He's so elusive. He's going to reel you in and then knock you out. We don't give Tank enough credit for his high IQ. He's extremely skilled, man. Nasty uppercut, nasty lead hand. And that's why it's hard to go against him, because we know that he has all the attributes. And if we had a list and we had to take off attributes between these two guys, Tank would have more of it,
Yeah.
because we've also
Yep.
seen more of Tank. So
Mhm.
all around, if you're taking a look, and he mentioned this, like he doesn't think Ryan's a complete fighter. If you had to compare the two, yeah, Tank is more of the complete fighter than, of course, Ryan Garcia is. But I just think that, I remember, I think it was that Isaac Cruz fight where at times where you were like, whoa, did he kind of stun Tank like a little bit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Tank does get hit a lot. So I think if Ryan uses his speed and goes to the body and that, like Ryan can knock you out in different ways,
Yeah.
right? We've seen him do it. So it's like, is he going to go to the body against Tank, which I think he should. He's going to have the height and reach advantage. You're also going to see Tank try to close the distance and close the gap and land on Ryan Garcia. So I think if Ryan tries to go to the body and land one of those liver shots, there's so many liver shots that you can only take. We haven't seen Tank go through that. Like, Leo Santa Cruz wasn't giving him that power, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is totally different.
Yeah. He's gonna be pushed. All right. Let's get to because we have two more segments on this fight, and we're gonna save our predictions for the betting.
Okay, but I know we're gonna move over, but before we go to that, the one thing that I want to ask you, and before we kind of go, because you kind of broke down, these two and how they fight.
Sure.
When it comes to this being the super fight of the year, is this the super fight of the year? And is it worth? And we kind of talked about this at this point with all the hype and the buildup. Is it worth the pay-per-view?
Well, the undercard is not terribly interesting, but yeah, this is worth $85. I think like you can't miss this fight. You just can't. Like honestly, I'm surprised it wasn't $100. Is this the fight of the year? I would say yes, unless Errol Spence fights Terrence Crawford, or as we talked about in our last episode, if that heavyweight tournament actually comes together, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. But other than that, and as of now, yes. Some might even say Devin Haney, Vasily Lomachenko is bigger. I don't think it is necessarily. I think it is. I think it is from the sense of like, okay, this is for undisputed lightweight championship or whatever.
I think I think that's a super fight too. And maybe I'm tripping because I like both. Like,
but in terms of that fight, while I love both fighters, it's not going to transcend boxing the way this is, because Tank stands are nuts and Ryan Garcia's stands are nuts, both in different ways. I'm not going to make the jokes that I've made off mic, but like,
yeah, there's been a lot of them.
maybe we'll make a Patreon for that so I can give up the goods. But yeah, I just don't. This is a fight that transcends sport.
Yeah,
in a way that I don't know if Devin Haney, Vasily Lomachenko does, as much as I love that. I probably love that fight more tactically, but I also go into that fight like I'm more confident that Devin Haney is going to win than I am that Tank or Ryan is going to win.
Okay, so that's another thing that we'll have to get into, because I think Loma has a really good chance in that fight, but that's not what we're talking about today. We'll get into that another time. I do want to say one last thing. Ryan Garcia is also bringing fans to this fight that probably don't even watch boxing.
Right.
A type of fan base that maybe is on TikTok, or maybe they follow him.
Gen Z,
they think he looks good or something.
Think he's fine and shit.
Listen. This is the type of fans that Ryan Garcia has. And I want to give, so There was this girl I used to work with when I was doing sidelines for soccer, and she knew I liked boxing, and she'd be like, "Hey, I like that one boxer. He's like this. I think he's like Mexican American. He has really nice hair." Right away, I knew like Ryan Garcia. So I'm saying like he has a fan base that doesn't even watch boxing, but that's nonetheless. All right, let's get into